So, hello everyone. This interview is the second interview in English, and this is the second interview from US, let's say, because as you may remember, yesterday on the 5th of April, I had a conversation with my friend Honza, who is currently based in Virginia, I guess. And now I've got my distant cousin, Mel Munchinsky. Hello, Mel.
Hello.
And I'd like to, first of all, distant cousin, I'd like to somehow clarify this term. As some of you may know, I am the offspring of Czech people who were based in Ukraine, today's Ukraine, and before that they came from Poland, from Zelów, and before that they were based in Eastern Bohemia. So they fled during the 17th century to Poland, and from Poland they went to the Ukraine. In the 1920s, they came back, and one of those people was my great-grandmother, and that was a sister of Mel's grandmother. Yeah. So we are relatives. We look alike. And Mel is based in Arizona, is it true?
That is correct.
Yeah. And so first of all, Mel, how would you introduce yourself to a stranger? Who are you? What you doing for a living?
Yes, well, who am I? I often say that I'm a third culture kid. That is because I'm a mixture of different cultures. Just like Honza has already told you, our roots are in Ukraine, near Rivne or Rovno, which I had the privilege of visiting a few years ago and seeing actually where they lived, and it was very interesting. And they moved into the Czech Republic and so on in the 1920s. And my father and his family came to Canada shortly before World War II. And the result was that that's where I was actually born and raised. So my real name is Miloslav Munčinsky, but because there is no translation for that name, friends just shortened it to Mel. So that's what my name is. The result is that there's sometimes confusion about what my name actually should be. So that is another issue. Yes, I lived in Canada for most of my life. I will have to probably be 85 years old before I live longer in the United States than I did in Canada. And so most of my background is there. And to be very frank with you, I'm more Canadian than I am American, so I will be honest about that, because my value system is very much based there, but you can understand why that is depending upon where you live. Honza, maybe I should give you a brief sense of journey as to why I am in the United States. Can I do that?
Do, please.
As I said, I was born in Western Canada, east of Calgary, Alberta, about 5 hours, on the plains, on the prairie. And the Czech community that was there was very much part of my life. Everybody in the community spoke Czech at that time, but it was a real brief period of time. We even had our own church, which we attended. The grocery store person spoke Czech, and so did everybody else. However, when I went to school, I didn't speak any English. And so I was dropped off at the doorstep of the school, and I didn't have any idea what was going on. And so as a result of that, it took several years to really learn English. there was nobody there to really teach me because everybody that could maybe help me worked in the fields and on the farms. And although periodically my aunt or somebody would, help me to understand, they just did not have the time. So that was a real issue. So I really didn't learn English and catch up with anybody else until grade 8. So it took about 8 years, 8 or 9 years. And finally, I learned English in that process. To help me, I listened to the radio. And the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation would often have different programs on that I would listen to. One of the more interesting ones that I listened to quite often on Saturdays was about different occupations that children could think about having as they grew up, when they grew up. And so I would listen to different things. They would have people on there that they would interview doctors and nurses and engineers and people like that. So I remember this one particular interview was with a Foreign Service officer. And I listened to that very closely, and I'm going, oh, that would be a really neat job to have, to be a Foreign Service officer in global Canada. And so I thought, I think that's probably what I'll do. Well, indeed, after I graduated from high school, after learning French, which I hardly know much of now, I did go to college and I majored in political science. And that was very interesting to me, but I primarily did it because I wanted to be a Foreign Service officer. That's probably where, I should maybe major in. So I did. And I majored primarily in international affairs. They had a very broad category, and that's what I did. In the process, I did write these civil service exams for that. 5 of us wrote that. I mean, I should say 5 friends, and I wrote that. They received rejection letters in the first week, but I was waiting for mine, and it never came. And I waited and waited. That was perhaps maybe in late September, and still didn't receive anything until Christmas. And then I came back to college afterwards. And finally in February, I got my rejection letter. And so the result was that they were considering my application for a long time, and for some reason they did not accept me. However, there's more than one way to become a Foreign Service officer rather than just writing an exam. After I graduated 3 years later with a political science degree, with a minor in sociology, which I'll come back to later, I ended up with a job in Ottawa, Canada, on Parliament Hill, in Canada's capital. I was in the center block on the 5th floor, 50 feet from the bell tower. And I was working there primarily as a research assistant to senators. That took about 2/3 of my time. The other third I spent in answering correspondence and receiving phone calls and taking people on tours to the Parliament buildings or wherever, and this kind of a thing. It was a very interesting job. I enjoyed it tremendously. The problem was that it was a job just made for me. And I was kind of what they call the guinea pig of all of this. Since after I left, they hired 2 or 3 more, and now there's many more people that are doing what I did when I first started. But my whole idea was to be in Ottawa and get to know people in the Foreign Service so that I could maybe get in as a Foreign Service officer that way. And in the process of being trained there on Capitol Hill, I could perhaps use that as my experiential base to, be accepted by global Canada affairs. In the process, however, I had an encounter with the Methodist Church there, and discovered that perhaps maybe I may not want to really do that. And so after thinking about it, and after interviewing with a lawyer, because I was going to go to law school and I did apply, I decided perhaps maybe a better course would be go to seminary. So I did that.
Mm.
And in that process, I ended up at Asbury Theological Seminary in Wilmore, Kentucky, which is one of the largest seminaries in the United States. While I was there, I majored in 2 particular degrees. One happened to be, of course, the Master of Divinity, and the other one was a Master of Sociology.
Mm-hmm.
And so those 2 I graduated with both the same year. One of the other ironic things that happened during that time is that in order to be able to, go get into to graduate with a Master of Divinity was you had to learn Greek. So,
So how many foreign languages do you know?
I know just a little bit of a lot, but not master of none.
Ah.
And so I learned Greek, but and I didn't know at that time that it would be very helpful to what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
In the process, however, just to quickly bring this to somewhat of a conclusion, I graduated from there and I've served in different churches in Ontario, Canada, and Arizona. And the reason why I'm in Arizona is because my wife is from Scottsdale and we were married, and eventually we moved here to be closer to her parents. So that is why we came to Arizona. And ever since I've been here, I've become a Foreign Service officer, except with a different twist. Because I have worked for our Global Mission Society out of Atlanta, Georgia now. And I've been assigned to different places. And one of the first places that I ended up going to was Central Europe, and primarily the Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, and Austria were the primary places. And then they assigned me to Cameroon, Africa. That was very brief. It lasted about a month. And the reason why it did was because of medical issues that I have, and I was advised not to travel there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So my boss came back to, I thought that was the end of that. My boss came to me about a month later and he said, we would like you to, work in Latvia. He said, really, there's no problem there. There's no mosquitoes there in the wintertime, so you'll be just fine. The medical issues that I had issues with had to do with transference of illnesses because of the mosquitoes, the malaria.
Ah.
And so anyway, the thing about it is that I was working with Latvia for about a year, and it will be now, I suppose, 11 or 12 years ago, he came to me and said, well, we want you to work in Eurasia. Mm-hmm. So I have worked in Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Belarus in the intervening years. And I say it's a Foreign Service officer because really that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to relate people from these countries to Americans here in the United States, building and bridging relationships. That's what I've been doing for all these many years. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this has been a major thrust of mine, which has produced some very interesting and very good results, I believe. So that's a quick snapshot of where I am, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm still actually working in Eurasia. I was supposed to go this May to Ukraine, but obviously that has been canceled, and Russia in August, but we'll wait and see on that.
So you made a segue for me because the next question for you by me was to ask you how this is a worldwide situation, and I know that it is a worldwide situation because I had a conversation with my friend in Indonesia, and their lives are affected as well by this thing. We all know what we are talking about. So apart from that you had to cancel your trips to the world, how does it somehow affect your work, your profession right now? Because since you are a pastor, and the Easter's coming, so how does this situation affect this part of a year for you?
It does create some issues, of course, and one of the biggest things that I try to promote is what we call the ministry of presence. Now, the ministry of presence is known in hospice situations, in hospital situations, in many other similar kinds of situations, which means that a person is trying to be present when it is most needful. And it's more than just the body in the room. It is actually trying to feel and to touch and give emotional support. And one of the things that is, I know that was being planned by several groups wanting to visit places in Russia, for example. They were planning to go there this spring and actually celebrate Easter with some people. And now obviously they're not going to go. And the thing about it is that being present with others is so important, face to face. Now, I'm very grateful for what we're doing here, Honza, and that is being able to have this modern technology. This does make the world smaller, and it does bring us closer together. But there is nothing that can be substituted by being physically, emotionally, mentally present in front of another person.
Yeah.
And,
being in the same time and in the same place. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that has affected certain people, of course. Now, we all understand why we're not doing this, which is acceptable. But it is that's one of the strains that we're trying to overcome. So we're trying to overcome it with technology. And like I say, that is the second best thing, and we're very grateful that it is available. I remember especially, well, I don't remember because I was not even born or much later, but I was told by my mother later that they didn't know what happened to the relatives in Ukraine after World War II because there was no instantaneous communication. They didn't know for months, sometimes a year or two later. They were only able to find out what actually happened and where these people were and who survived and who didn't. So we are indeed privileged to be able to have this instantaneous communication now. And, we don't have to wait a month or two for letters or whatever. We are able to do that so quickly. And so that in itself is very, very comforting, I believe, to many people around the world, being able to especially connect now that we have time to do that. Before we were so busy. Now we can actually sit down and actually have a conversation.
And meaningful, hopefully.
That's right. I hope so.
So that was your somehow professional life. What about your life on day-to-day basis? Your just mundane things. I don't know what is the situation in the US right now because of this pandemic outbreak. Does this issue somehow affect your common life in general?
Well, of course, I think it affects everybody's life. I can't imagine it doesn't. I think even people in some of the most remotest part of the world are concerned about it, and they should be, because you just don't know how far this has spread. And I think that's probably the biggest part, is the uncertainty of not knowing exactly how far this has actually gone. My personal view is that the COVID-19 virus has been developing for years, and we're just now starting to find out that it really is we're hosts as humans, and we're able to transfer it as freely as we can. But that's a scientific question, and I'll just leave it there. I think that it has certainly affected my life and your life, and even day-to-day activities here in the United States have been very much affected. Many of you may know that people here in the United States love to, move and get around and be engaged in many different activities. Well, all that has now stopped. People are at home. And I don't know how many people I have heard from that they tell me that they're bored. They don't know what to do. And I'm thinking, well, my goodness, we have all these modern conveniences. In the old days when you stayed home, you did a lot of reading, you did a lot of contemplation, things like that. My goodness, you have video games and all kinds of things possible now. So yes, but nevertheless, I think that is one of the biggest complaints, is that people are bored and don't know what to do. I think it's good for us in the way that we need to learn how to deal with boredom. The reason why I say that, Honza, is because when I was on the farm, we worked very hard. We were always doing something. We were in the fields or taking care of animals or something. And we were always glad when we could come in at night and just sit and do nothing. And I suppose that would be called boredom. I don't know, but we were glad to be bored. We were glad to just simply sit and do nothing and just kind of stare in the air sometimes. And I don't want to give you the picture that this was, always the case, but we welcomed the boredom because it gave us the rest that we needed and gave us refreshment for the next day. But it has impacted my daily life. One of the things that I like to do is I like hiking. Well, of course, that has been curtailed because going outside now, you have to be very careful as to who you meet and where you go and the number of people that are there. And this is prime time in Arizona to go hiking in the spring. The weather is so lovely. So that's been impacted. Just doing simple things like going to the grocery store has been impacted, as well as yours, I'm sure. You don't go as often. Those kinds of things that we took for granted many times definitely have augmented the way that we actually, conduct our daily lives.
It makes me and makes us realize what we are doing. It makes us probably realize what is necessary and with what can be omitted, probably.
Yes, I think you're right. And the thing that I really miss is seeing my children and grandchildren.
Sure.
I just don't want to go and be with them during this time because I might be a carrier or they might be a carrier. We don't know. And so I really do miss them, especially the youngest one, which will now be a year old in about 2 weeks. And I have not seen many of these grandchildren now for about 2 or 3 months. So,
and they are growing up that fast. Yeah. I see. Okay. The last task for you, if I may say, would be, I'm always asking the person if you have some kind of advice for people how to cope with this situation, and to tell us how do you personally cope and manage this issue, this worldwide issue. How do you relax, and what can you tell us how to cope with the situation and don't get mad because of the situation?
Yes, I think this has been a learning process for all of us. And I'm not sure whether there's one specific answer. I think one of the things that we need to recognize, and I've always been a proponent of this, is that let science and medical people lead the way in explaining what is happening. I am not sure that I know they don't know everything. But let me tell you that here in the United States, too many politicians put the spin on science or medical advice, which can be detrimental to your well-being. And that is the first thing that I would recommend, is that people do take this seriously from that point of view, that we do social distancing. I find that an oxymoron, really. I find that rather strange. Why don't we call it space distancing or something like that? But anyway. But the thing is that we need to follow medical advice. Secondly, I am not afraid of getting COVID-19. I don't want it, obviously. But if I do, well, then I'm going to just simply try to do the best that I can to survive, just like so many people are doing today. Literally tens of thousands of people have recovered. So that is the good news. We do know that a lot of people have died because of medical complications for the most part. But we simply want to do our best to be able to survive, because that just seems to be in our innate nature, at least it is in mine. And thirdly, my mind is at peace. I have a good relationship with God. I have no problems with that. Whatever happens, happens. I have a kind of a very different view of eternity, maybe, than maybe the classical view, but that is another discussion. The thing about it is that I think you have to make peace with yourself. What is going to be your legacy? And the thing about legacy is people say, well, it really doesn't matter what your legacy is. Once you're gone, people forget you and everything else. My particular thing is that every person that comes into the world leaves an influence of some sort. I don't care who you are. You leave some sort of impression on someone. People will forget you, but that influence, that spirit that you gave to somebody else, will continue. I don't remember a lot of the things that, or even maybe some of my teachers over the years, but each and every one of them has influenced me in some way to make me the person that I am today. So I believe that in some way that you are doing the same thing, no matter who you are, where you are, and we should not write that off quickly, because each of us does leave something behind, no matter who we are.
And each of us probably matter.
Definitely, each of us matters. Yes.
Mel, thank you very much. Really, I really appreciate that you find in this hectic part of year for you, I can assume, that you found the time to share that time with me and hopefully with other people as well through this interview. Thanks so much.
It's wonderful connecting with you, and I hope we'll have a wonderful spring and summer, and let's hope we can all keep healthy.
And as the ending phrase, I am used to say, let's see each other and let's meet without the face mask in some time, hopefully.
Yes.
So, Mel, see you and thanks so much and take care and stay healthy.
And goodbye for now.
Bye-bye. Take care.